if people haven't eaten for a long period of time, there's a risk that they can get something called refeeding syndrome when they start to re-eat or refeed.
Right.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Fasting Podcast. I'm Brianne Sims, RN.
I'm Dr. Sam Sims, nurse anesthesiologist.
And today we're talking about refeeding syndrome, a common worry.
A common worry for an uncommon thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Something that people are always worried about with fasting. And so we want to sort of dispel some of those myths around refeeding syndrome and fasting.
Yeah, so sometimes people have heard of refeeding syndrome. So what is refeeding syndrome? What's our risk? What do we have to worry about? If people haven't eaten for a long period of time, there's a risk that they can get something called refeeding syndrome when they start to re-eat or refeed.
Right.
Okay? It basically has to do with the phosphate in your body. And phosphate is stored in your bones. Pretty much almost, like over 80% of it's in your bones and your teeth.
Right.
Okay? And it's essential for cellular function. And in the fasted state, your body just kind of preserves it very well. But when your insulin goes up when you first eat, then your body's like, okay, we're eating again. We're going to start making, glycogen, fat, protein. We're going to start doing all these things and sort of start to pull this phosphate out of your bones to make these mechanisms happen again. And they go into your cells, and basically they're not in your system as much as they were because your body just kind of like dumps that all the extra that it has, and now doesn't have any more phosphate because it just started eating again. And so that kind of utilizes it all up.
Okay.
Is what happens. And when that happens, it's essential for all the cellular functions in your body to work.
Okay.
So if you deplete your phosphate stores when you refeed, then there's a risk of having heart problems and liver problems, and it can potentially kill someone. So you can't just give people food. We have to give people the right food. It happens very rarely. Less than 0.5% of people who are malnutritioned get refeeding syndrome. So very rare. All you have to do is you have to make sure that you don't stimulate your insulin too much, and you have some phosphate, magnesium, and thiamine, which is a B vitamin. You take that, and it helps all these processes maintain normal stability.
Right.
Okay.
Once you start eating again.
When you start eating again. So a lot of multivitamins have the minerals phosphate and magnesium, and you need to give yourself some thiamine when you start refeeding. And you want to make sure you don't stimulate your insulin too much.
Right.
So what you do is you eat a bunch of sugar.
Right. Don't break your fast with sugar. Imagine that.
You want to keep your insulin normal. So you want to eat things that have phosphate in them, like fruits, vegetables, protein, fats. Are all good. Doesn't stimulate your insulin too much. Get your body to used to utilizing and eating and utilizing those phosphate stores without depleting them.
Right.
Okay. And it's supposed to be a slower process. So so the risks they say can come at if you've been fasted more than 10 days, but also if you're have anorexia nervosa, you have a low BMI. So
you're only at risk for refeeding syndrome if you have a low BMI.
Yes.
Or if you've been fasting for more than 10 days.
Yes. Okay. And you break your fast and you spike your insulin really high.
With sugar.
Or
starches or things like that.
Yeah. So you should have real food when you break your fast.
Yeah. So
don't break your fast with pizza and pasta.
Right. And if you haven't already seen our video on how to break your fast, go back and watch that.
Yeah. So prevent refeeding syndrome. If you fasted more than 4, get a thiamine. Take your multivitamin. We've talked about. Make sure you take your multivitamin. Make sure that's some phosphate.
Every day while you're fasting.
Add some magnesium in.
Continue to take the multivitamin after you break your fast.
Yep, and add some thiamine in. Especially if you're planning on doing a longer fast.
Yeah, very long fast.
Then it recommends adding this thiamine in a couple days before you start eating. So make sure you have and then just regular stuff. So regular minerals, phosphorus. Magnesium, potassium, all those things in a multivitamin. Make sure you're taking vitamin D. And I recommend that you go get your labs checked. So I had my labs checked that also had magnesium.
On a long fast, yeah.
On a long fast that had magnesium, phosphorus, and then after I ate, I had them checked again. So I make sure they were getting depleted to see if I need to add more in.
Right.
So get a nutrient supplement. Don't spike your insulin.
Right.
And we don't recommend anybody fasting below a BMI of 17 anyway, and it has the risk is involved below 16, so we wouldn't recommend anybody fasting at that state anyway.
Yeah.
It's less than 0.5% that this happens to.
Right. So if you've watched all of our previous videos on how to fast safely
Yeah.
and who should and shouldn't fast, then you shouldn't be at risk for
Yep.
refeeding syndrome.
Yep. So very rare, very unlikely. Take your multivitamin, and don't spike your insulin with a bunch of sugar when you break your fast.
Yeah.
Eat real food.
Exactly, which is good advice 100% of the time anyway.
Yeah, you'll feel terrible if you do. Yeah, you should watch. We did our 14-day fast, and I think we didn't get refeeding syndrome, but we definitely spiked our insulin because we had a lot of pasta and pizza.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was.
And we didn't feel well.
Yeah, that was a rough fast breaking episode. There,
we didn't feel well.
We learned some of the wrong ways to break your
Yeah,
fast.
so yeah, it's a real risk, but it's extremely rare.
There you have it. Thanks for listening. If this was helpful to you, I would love it if you send it to someone else who might be helpful too.
And we'll provide a link for the research from the National Institute for Health and Clinical Excellence, or NICE, that talks about how to prevent what refeeding syndrome is and how to prevent it.
Yeah, fantastic. If you have any other questions about it, drop them in the comments. We'd love to answer.